Good morning and welcome to the Syncfusion webinar, Exploring Syncfusion's Dashboard and Report Servers. My name is Marisa Keller-Outen. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Syncfusion and your moderator for today's webinar. Our presenter today is Aaron Melamed, Product Solution Specialist here at Syncfusion. If you have any questions, you can enter them into the questions box on the right side of the screen at any time. We'll answer the questions at the end of the session and also post the entire Q&A on our blog. We are recording this webinar and will share the link in the next few days. All registrants will receive an email with this link. This and previous webinars will be available on our YouTube channel. Before we get started, I'd like to briefly tell you about Syncfusion. Syncfusion delivers an extensive range of over 800 web, mobile, and desktop controls. We also empower businesses to get the most out of their data with our enterprise solutions, including the dashboard and big data platforms. We have been in business for over 15 years and are headquartered in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina in the U.S. Syncfusion has more than 12,000 customers, including large financial institutions, Fortune 100 companies, and global IT consultancies. More than 900,000 users from 125 countries trust Syncfusion in their development process. Now that you know a bit more about us, I'll hand this over to Aaron to get started.
Okay, thank you. As was mentioned earlier, today we're going to be looking at our dashboard and reporting platforms. So to start off, we're going to be looking at the dashboard platform, which is an end-to-end solution for creating, managing, and sharing interactive business dashboards. It includes a powerful dashboard designer application for easily composing dashboards, as well as a web interface for managing and sharing those dashboards. We'll also be looking at the report platform, which is a complete solution for enterprise reporting. It shuns proprietary reporting standards and is built upon the Open Report Definition Language, RDL, specification used by products like Microsoft SQL Server reporting services. It includes an intuitive drag-and-drop powered report designer application, a web server application, and an SDK. The dashboard designer features a completely drag-and-drop interface, also includes a wide variety of data sources supported out of the box, intuitive data source designer that allows for data transformation, supports custom HTML5 widgets, includes a built-in previewer, has direct integration with the dashboard server, and much more. The report designer allows you to build reports with advanced data sources like SQL, SQL Azure, Oracle, and more. It also features interactive wizards to easily build matrix groupings and visualization elements such as charts and maps. It also has the ability to create reports with parameters and query and other report elements. It also supports expressions, which provide you the ability to dynamically control the layout of the report based on data. Both of the platforms also feature a server component, so each provides a complete web interface for sharing and managing those dashboards and reports. Both allow for the data to stay on your own server, so you can host either on your own local network or on your own secure cloud servers. They both feature a scheduling component that allows you to automatically email dashboards or reports to specified recipients. Both feature cost-effective licensing and both support white labeling. Both platforms also feature an SDK. The SDK allows you to embed your dashboards and reports within your own application. We feature support for both web and Windows desktop platforms, as well as mobile with the Dashboard SDK. So now let's go ahead and start the demo and actually look at the dashboard designer. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with the dashboard designer. From there, we'll move into the server component, and then we'll look at the report platform. So this is the report designer, which features a drag-and-drop interface, as was mentioned before. On the left side, you'll find all of the widgets you can use to build out your report. So all of your visual charting elements, your grids, mapping components, etc., you'll find here, as well as any filters and miscellaneous widgets, which allow for the insertion of text and image widgets as well. On the right, we have a couple of panels that give you information about the dashboards that you're building. So in the top right, we have the dashboards panel, and this allows you to create additional dashboards in the same interface. So we actually have a tabbed interface, so if you click the plus sign here, you'll be able to start working on a second dashboard. Beneath that, we have our data sources panel. This will allow you to create connections to your various data sources. So as you can see here, we've already got one established data source. This is to a sample or a SQL server with some sample data on it. If I click on this plus sign, we can take a look at all the data sources that we support out of the box. So here in the dashboard designer, we have support for Microsoft Excel, CSV, JSON, and text documents. We also have support for database sources, including SQL Server, SQL Server Analysis Services, ODBC connections, PostgreSQL, and SQLite. On Azure, we support Azure Table Storage. And we also have other data sources, including Salesforce, Spark SQL, Hive, and Web Data Sources, which are going to give you access to those RESTful APIs. Beneath that data source panel, we have our widgets panel, which allows us to see all the widgets we're currently utilizing in the dashboard that we're currently working on. And then beneath that, we have a list of any linked dashboards that we're connecting to. So the dashboard platform allows for essentially master detail type relationships or drill through type relationships using linked dashboards. We'll talk about that a little bit later once we get into the dashboard server. So to move forward, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and create a simple dashboard just so you can see how easy it is to get started with the dashboard designer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out the components or the widgets that I'm going to use in this dashboard. So I'm going to start with a grid. I'm also going to use the card widget. And I'm going to apply a single filter here, which in this case is going to be the Arrange Navigator. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be displaying some order details inside of a grid, and I'm going to be able to filter those orders by their order date using the Arrange Navigator. Before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and go into my data source and bring up the data source designer. Using this interface, I can actually pull out the data set that I want to use in my dashboard. So you can see we also have support for views, which we don't have any in this particular database, and then of course our tables. So for this example, I'm going to be pulling out just a couple of tables from our sample database and creating the dashboard using this order detail or the order details that I was mentioning earlier. So I'm going to pull out first our orders table. So once I drag that onto the virtual table here, as it's called, we get a nice data preview. So you can see across the bottom, we pull out the first 100 rows from your table so you can see what you're working with. So I can see that all my columns here were correctly identified as their correct type. So we have date columns, we have some text and numerical columns, so everything was correctly identified. I also have the ability here to merge tables. So I am going to be doing that since I need some additional information. So I'm going to pull out my order details table, and this will bring out the join editor. So via the join editor, I have the ability to do an inner join or a left outer join in this case. I'm going to leave it an inner join and merge on order ID. All right, so you'll see that second table comes there. And then if I scroll to the end of my data set here, we can see the additional columns that were added. So discount, quantity, unit price, product ID. You can see those here from that second table that was used. Through this data source designer, I also have the ability to perform some basic data transformation operations. So for example, I can change the column types that I'm using. So this order ID column was correctly identified as integer, but for my purposes, I need it to be text. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. I also have the ability to create or add additional columns via expressions. So these expressions allow me to manipulate my data using various functions. So you can see here through this drop-down menu the different types of functions we can apply. So they can be numerical, aggregation, conditional, logical, date, string, or filter. We can do other things as well. So for example, if we have date fields, we can come here to the settings and change our date formats and apply other functions such as aggregation functions on that data. For my purposes though, this is all I need to do to finish building out my dashboard. So this is my data set that I've been working with. But before I move on, there's one other option that I have here. So if I wanted to import a query from, let's say, SQL Server, I can do that as well. So I can actually switch from this design view to a query view that allows me to view the query that was actually generated by the designer, and I can also import any existing queries that I have in case I want to run it that way. But as I said, that's all I need to do to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and resize my widgets here on the dashboard. So I'll make the grid take up most of the page. I'll increase the size of this card widget just so it's easier to see. And my range navigator, which again is also my filter, I'm going to stretch that across the top. I'm going to start with a grid, so I'm going to click on it and then click on its settings icon here in the top right. And from here I can edit its properties. So I have a couple of quick properties I can set across the top here, and then the rest of them are found here on the right side. So I am going to go ahead and allow filtering as well as allow paging, since I know that I'm going to have plenty of records to display and I'll need to page through the results to see them all. Once I've done that, I can either click here on the Assign Data tab or button, or I can click on this Data tab to take me to the Assign Data panel. So from here, again, I have a drag and drop interface that allows me to map my fields to this grid. So I'm going to start with that order ID field. And then I'll set my order date. I'll also set the ship date. I'll bring in the quantity from that second table I pulled in, the order details table. And then I will close this up with the ship country. Now before I move on, you might have noticed that when I dragged in the date fields, the two date fields, they actually defaulted to just showing me the year. So I want to change that date format. Since I do actually want to see the full date, what I can do is I can click on the little settings icon and then choose date as my date format. And that will allow me to see both the day, the month, and the year. If I wanted to change the date format to match, let's say, a different culture, I can go further and go through this More panel, and this gives me additional date format settings to choose from. But in this case, both my order date and my ship date, I want them to appear as a full date. All right, so that's all I need to do here with the grid, so I can move on, and I'm going to start to customize this, the card widget now. So the card widget by default, as you can see here, it actually asks for two different values in order to display data. So it asks for an actual versus a target value. In my case, I actually don't have two different values. I just want to display a singular value. So what's going to happen when I do that, the actual template of the card widget will change to more appropriately display the data that it's given. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it my order ID field as the actual value. And when I do that, it's actually going to change to show me a distinct count of how many order IDs I have. All right, so you can see there the template changed, and now it's just kind of a call out of how many order IDs I have. And what I'm going to do, or the reason why I want to do this, is because this is going to be tied to my range navigator. So anytime I filter through the results in my grid, the card widget will actually call out how many total results there are. So next, I can go ahead and set up the range navigator. So I'm going to go ahead and go directly to the Assign Data tab for this. And in this case, once again, it is asking for two values. It's asking for a value and an argument. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be filtering by my order date, so I'm actually going to provide that twice. So first as a value, which will give me a count of how many order dates are in my data set, and then again as the argument, which will actually give me the values of those dates. So this might be a little bit hard to see through this preview window, but once again, when I added the order date field to this range navigator, it defaulted to just showing me the year. Now the sample data set that I'm working with actually only contains 3 years, from 1996 through 1998. Again, I want to see more than just a year for my purposes, so in this case, I'm actually going to switch to showing the month and the year, so I have more endpoints to choose from when I set my ranges. One other thing I'd like to point out is that this range navigator is also a chart in and of itself. So by default, this data is represented as a spline area chart. But you can come here to the configuration settings and change that series type to something else, such as stacking column. So this just gives you a nice visual way to see how many values there are for each of the dates. In my case, as I'm using dates as my filtering field. But I'm actually going to change it back to spline area since I think it looks a little bit better. All right, and so that's all I need to do. So at this point, I'm ready to preview my dashboard. So the dashboard designer does also have a built-in previewer, which you can access here from the top right. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And what it's going to do is it's going to compile that dashboard and then load it into my my web browser here. So now my range navigator is active, so I can change the start and end points and set my date range. You can see as I do that, the card widget automatically updates to reflect how many records are being shown in this grid. And you can see that the total number of records shown in the card do match the total number of records being shown here at the bottom of the grid. Now I can actually deviate from that a little bit. So if I change this date, the date range here in the range navigator, I can then use the filtering option inside of the grid itself to filter the results even more. So I'm going to type in USA for the ship country. And now the grid is showing me a subset of 25 items out of the total 158 that this range navigator was filtering through. And that's it. So that's all you really need to do to get started and create a relatively simple but still interactive dashboard. So now let's move into the dashboard server itself. So once you've completed a dashboard, such as the one that I have here, you actually have a couple of ways to publish that dashboard to your server. So before I actually show you the server, let's go back to the designer and let me show you the different ways you can publish. So the first way is the most direct way. So you can log into your dashboard server through the server tab up here at the top. You can see that I'm already logged in, and because I am, I also have the ability to publish directly to my server. So as you can see, I have three options. I can publish the entire dashboard itself, or I can publish the data source that I have connected to this dashboard, or I can publish individual widgets from this dashboard as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that once we get into the dashboard server. But as you can see here, it's pretty simple to just take something you've completed through the designer and publish it directly to your dashboard server. Another thing you have the ability, another way you can publish dashboards is manually. So you can always save your dashboards to your local machine. So you can do save or save as, which will give you an SYDX file. And you can take that, and now when you go to your dashboard server, you can click this create button at the top, choose dashboard, and this will give you the ability to set the category that you want your dashboard to be uploaded to, give it a name, and of course browse for the file on your local machine. So as you can see, this is the main interface for the dashboard server. So from here, you have access to any dashboards that you've published. You also have the ability to set categories or otherwise manage your dashboards by placing them into folders, among other things. So before I go any further into the features of the dashboard server, I'm actually going to start with user management. So some of the features that we have here actually depend on this. So in the, as mentioned before, the dashboard server is a complete web solution for managing and sharing dashboards. And so that means that you need a way to give people access to the dashboard server. And so that's where user management comes in. So you can see here, you can create users one at a time, but you can also import them from CSV, from Active Directory, from Azure Active Directory, or directly from your database. Once inside, you can set individual user permissions, and these are pretty granular. So you have read, write, and delete permissions that you can set for categories, specific dashboards, as well as individual features of the dashboard server itself. We can also create groups, which are essentially roles. So you can see here the default group is actually a system administrator role, and it too can be created in a number of different ways. So one at a time, or it can be imported from Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. And then once created, again, you can create group level permissions. And here in this example, you can see some of the other permissions you can set. So data sources, schedules, widgets, and a few other things as well. So schedules is actually one of the features that we have available in the dashboard server. So I'm going to go back to that dashboard view. And let's talk about that scheduling feature. So what you need to do is just choose a dashboard, hover over it. You'll get these the little ellipses here. So you can click on that to bring out the context menu for that dashboard, and you'll get the option to create a schedule. So a schedule has two different features in the dashboard server. So its default feature is to allow you to create a recurring event. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. I've chosen my dashboard. Click Next. And so here I can choose I can set the recurrence of this event. So I can make this daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. So I'm going to choose weekly, and I want this to recur every Monday and every Friday. So at the beginning, at the end of every week. So from there I can set when this starts, how often it occurs, if it ever ends. So we're going to leave it at the default of never so that it just goes on into infinity. And then from there we can choose from our list of users, from our groups, Or we can set external recipients by adding email addresses to receive an email containing an attachment of whatever dashboard we set this up for. You can see here you can also choose the format in which to deliver that dashboard. So it can be an image, it can be a PDF, or it can be an Excel file. One of the other features of scheduling is data alerts. So if I go back to this first pane here, we can toggle this data alerts function, and when I do that, it'll give me the ability to set some sort of threshold. So if I have, let's say, a sales goal that I'm trying to reach, or I want my employees to reach, we can set up a data alert so that whenever that goal is reached, whoever I set up to receive this this automatic email will receive a copy of the dashboard showing whatever data is relevant at that time. So there's a number of different features, or a number of different ways that the scheduling feature can be used. One other feature you'll have access to once you've uploaded a dashboard to the dashboard server is version history. Version history allows you to keep track of all the different versions of a dashboard file. So you'll have the ability to set permissions to allow people to not just view but also edit your dashboard files. So if people have edit permissions, they can download a dashboard file, change it in the editor, and then upload it back to the server. If they do that, you'll see the different versions here. So from here you have the ability to restore, download, or open those previous versions, and you'll also have an event log that'll show you who's actually been making those changes. So now let's actually talk about the dashboards themselves. The dashboard viewer embedded in the dashboard server also contains a number of features that are unique to it as well. So what I'm doing right now is I'm loading a dashboard that features multiple filters. So this is a dashboard for a car company that's selling worldwide. So we can see that we're looking at sales numbers all over the world. So we have this map component that's showing us all the different countries where we've had sales that we're currently active in. And then we also have these filters that allow us to set things like our date range. We can also set specific car brands or manufacturers, and we can even choose the continent that we want to look at. So as I choose my different continents, let's go with North America, you can see that my other widgets here will update to show me the sales data that's relevant to those parameters. But I can actually go a step further because it's actually a fourth filter here, which is actually this map widget. So in addition to showing me how many units were sold in each of the individual countries, I can also click on a particular country, which will then actually apply a filter to the rest of the dashboard. So this particular component actually pulls double duty as both a chart and a filter. So one of the things you can do here when you have a dashboard like this where you have, let's say, global data that a lot of people have access to, but not everyone needs to see the exact same thing, one of the things you can do is you can set up your filters the way you need, and then using this filters overview menu here, you can actually save those as a view. So if you have multiple people accessing the same dashboard, they can save their own views. These are per user views, so they can always come here and see exactly what they need with just a few clicks. Another thing you have access to, and I'm actually going to switch dashboards to show this, another thing you have access to within the dashboard server is a commenting system. So you can actually create conversations around your dashboards by using this comment system. So this not only allows you to just post messages to the dashboard, these are also rich text messages. So you can actually not just format your text and change your fonts and things like that, you can also embed links as well as images and other files inside of your comments. So that works in conjunction with the ability to export your dashboard as well. So like we saw with the scheduling feature, you can manually export your dashboard to image, PDF, or Excel formats, and you can also embed those exports in your comments so you can have some visual context inside of those conversations. Not only can you comment and export at the dashboard level, you can also do that at the individual widget level. So you can see here for this sales goal widget we have here, we can export this separately from the rest of the dashboard and pull its data by itself. We can also start a conversation that's relevant just to that widget as well. And this is the same full-featured rich text post editor that we have here. So you get the same features at the widget level that you do at the dashboard level. So moving on, another feature that you'll have access to is that dashboard linking feature that I mentioned earlier. So you may have noticed that this particular dashboard does not actually have any filters that are available to me, so I can't really interact with this in any obvious way at least. But with dashboard linking, I can actually add some additional dimensions to this. So let's take the donut chart in the bottom right, for example. So that chart is showing me order information. So it's showing me the number of orders that I have and some specific statuses. So if I wanted to see more information about those orders, all I need to do is via dashboard linking, just click on a segment of this donut chart. This will then take me to a linked dashboard, which looks very similar to what I created earlier, but as you can see, it gives me more information about those orders. So now I have a grid that's showing me all the order details that I need to see. I have a range navigator at the bottom that lets me filter by, in this case, the delivery date. And I also have a second filter here with this drop-down menu that allows me to cycle through the different statuses that I have that my orders are in. So this way I can actually cycle through these statuses without having to go back to this main dashboard, click on another segment, and then be taken to the link dashboard again. I can do that all within here. So it's a very simple, very easy to use feature. Dashboard linking can actually be applied to pretty much all of the widgets within the Dashboard Designer. Most of them support dashboard linking. So for example, it also works here in this bar chart. So this particular bar chart is showing us annual sales data divided or grouped by division. So different divisions in this company are showing their annual sales. So if I wanted to break that down, I can, for example, click on one of these bars, and that will take me to a breakdown of those sales by month. And again, I don't need to go back to that main dashboard just to see the other division sales. So I can just go through this drop-down menu and choose a different division to see those sales breakdowns. The same thing can also be applied to the grid even. So you can actually have a master detail relationship set up with the grid. So it's possible to enable linking on the grid so that whenever you click on any of these rows, you can send a parameter to another dashboard, which will then pull up, let's say, another grid with additional information. So there's a lot of possibilities there with dashboard linking. Another feature that you have access to within the dashboard server is pinning. So you might have noticed there's this little pin icon next to some of these widgets, so I can actually click on that. And what it will let me do is apply that pinned widget to one of my home pages. So I can either create a new home page or I can select from my existing home pages to pin it to. So what that does is if I go to my home page, my dashboard home page, it lets me organize those pinned widgets into essentially my own custom dashboard. So here you can see some of the widgets I've previously pinned, and these are essentially coming from a variety of different dashboards. So here's the grid that I just pulled from that first dashboard, and here's a map component from the second dashboard showing all that the car sales data. So those are two different dashboards showing widgets on one page. So not only do I have the ability to mix and match widgets, I can also reposition them. So this is a drag and drop interface that allows me to really customize my view here. So not only can I have multiple widgets from multiple dashboards on a home page, I can also have multiple home pages. So from here you can create a new home page, and then you can start assigning widgets to those home pages. And so that brings us over to the settings aspect, or the settings menu of the dashboard server. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm actually going to start first with the email tab. So this email tab is what you would want to use if you want to take advantage of that scheduling feature and data alert feature. So from here, as you can see, you can set up your SMTP server so you can actually allow the dashboard server to send out those emails on your behalf. One other feature that this correlates to is with comments. So by default, you have, whenever you create a new comment, you automatically subscribe to an email thread so you can get notifications of new comments. You'll see here there is a notifications tab in the settings menu. This does allow you to turn that feature off if you don't want to automatically be set to be a watcher for those created comments. From here, we also have the ability through this default site tab to, we have access to those white labeling features that were mentioned in the beginning slide. So from here, you can see that you can change or remove all of the Syncfusion branding for the dashboard server so you can make it match that of your own or of your customers. So if you are in a situation where you would like to deploy this on behalf of your customers, and of course they would like to have it branded or to match their branding, you can do that from here. Additionally, you can also set up localization. So from here, you can add additional language files so that you can translate the entire interface in other languages. And you can also set your default date format, again, to match that of different cultures. The dashboard server also supports single sign-on. So you can see here there is an SSO tab. So this allows you to set that up so you can more easily allow for user integration within the dashboard server. All right, so now let's go ahead and move into the report designer. So this here is the report designer. So just like the dashboard designer, this also is a drag and drop interface. You would also start by creating a data source. So over here on the right, we can right click on this data sources folder or click on this new button here to create a new data source. And you can see here we support SQL Azure, SQL Server, ODBC connections, Oracle, XML, and a few others right out of the box. Once you set up a data source, you would then pull out a data set from that, and then from there you can start to build out your report. So I've actually got a previously created report here that I can pull up. You can see we have an established data source as well as a data set that we've pulled out from it. So without doing anything, I'm just going to go ahead and click the preview button here. So you can see this nicely laid out matrix report showing us various sales data. So now if I wanted to make changes to this, it's pretty simple. So I would start by clicking on the Insert tab here at the top. And that gives us access to all the various report components we have access to. So you'll notice you have basically the same components you have access to in the dashboard, although of course there are some differences since they are different types of files. So if I wanted to add, for example, a simple table, I can do that one of two ways. I can use the table wizard, which will guide me through choosing my data set and mapping my fields, or I can do it by using the insert table option, which allows me to go more hands-on. So from here, I can draw my table on the canvas, and then on the right, I can pull fields from my data set via drag and drop and just drop them into the table. The same thing applies to images. So if you wanted to add some additional visual flair to your reports, you can easily do that using drag and drop. So here we have an image called logo back. So this is our logo. So I'm just going to drag and drop that into the canvas, onto the report, and rename it to logo. And then from there I can resize and reposition it. So now when I go back to the Home tab and click Preview, you'll see my logo at the top, and you can see my very basic table at the bottom. So now that I know that all that works, I can go back to my design mode, click on this table at the bottom that I just added, and then go through my properties to make it look a little bit better. So I can change things like the cell colors, background, borders, things like that. So once you're done with your report, you're then able to save it and upload it to your report server. So let me go ahead and pull up the report server. So this is the report server, and as you might have noticed, it looks exactly like the dashboard server. So in terms of look and feel and the basic features at least, they are actually identical. The biggest difference between the two is of course the types of files they support. The dashboard server utilizes a Syncfusion's XYDX file format, whereas the report server allows you to upload RDL files. So the designer we just looked at is an RDL designer. So if you have existing RDL files, if you're already using Microsoft SSRS, you can just import those directly into our designer and they will just work. Same thing with the report server. You don't actually need to design anything in our designer in order to upload your files to the server. Any RDL file will work. So once here in the report server, as I mentioned, you have access to the same features we saw earlier. You can create schedules, you can manage permissions, you can view version history, restore previous files if you need to. You can look at custom views, so you can save those here through the report viewer. So if you have any parameters that you need to set, such as this invoice ID here on this example report, I can set a new invoice ID, and then I can see my applied filter and save it as a view. I can also create and view comments, just like I could on the dashboard server with the same interface, the same rich text interface. When it comes to scheduling, I have the same options minus data alerts at this time, but I do have the ability to export this report into a couple more formats compared to the dashboard. So I can export to PDF, Excel, Word, HTML, and PowerPoint formats. I also, of course, have the ability to print directly from here, as well as zoom in and zoom out and make it full screen. We have the same support for white labeling that we did in the dashboard server. So you can see here, essentially the exact same settings menu. We still have support for Active Directory, and we also have support for those email notifications that we saw in the dashboard server as well. Our report server also supports, or actually our report viewer supports multiple parameters. So we have the ability to kind of stack multiple parameters. So if you need to set various parameters on a report, again, the views feature comes into play there. So you're able to save a large number of filters as a custom view, and which again allows your users to easily access their specific version of a particular report. Now from here, we can start to talk about the SDK for both platforms. So I'm going to switch over to our documentation real quick, and let's take a look at the dashboard platform first. So as mentioned before, both platforms provide an SDK component. So if we look at the dashboard platform SDK, you'll see that we have support for all of our web platforms, all three major Windows desktop platforms, as well as Xamarin. So what these allow you to do, so for example, ASP.NET MVC, these allow you to embed those dashboards directly inside of your application. So you can create your own user experience, you can have your own authentication layer, and then you can customize the viewer itself as well. So if we look here under styling customization, there is the ability to set custom themes. So here we can see a dark theme for the viewer component. So you do have quite a bit of customization options available, as well as localization as well. Now, as mentioned earlier, the dashboard platform includes a fourth component, and that being the mobile platform, or the mobile application rather. So since we do provide a Xamarin component, we've gone ahead and created our own mobile application for the dashboard platform that actually gives you access to your dashboard server via a simple-to-use Android and iOS application. So you start by logging into your dashboard server. You then log in as your designated user, and then that gives you access to all the dashboards that you have permissions to see. So from there, you can not just view dashboards, but you can also manage them. So you can change dashboard categories and things like that. You can search, you can sort, you can filter, and you can also export. So you can actually export to various formats directly to your mobile device. Now moving on to the report platform, we'll see that we have more or less the same features, minus the mobile application. So going over to the report platform SDK, and the report viewer, we have several versions available for web and desktop. The report viewer also allows you to directly embed those reports in your application without having to use the report server at all. So you can embed your RDL files right into your application and not actually have to use the report server or the report designer as mentioned earlier. So these are very flexible components, highly customizable, and very extensible as well. All right, so that actually covers both the Syncfusion dashboard platform and the Syncfusion report platform. So hopefully you can see how easily it is to get started, how easily it is to deploy, and provide a complete web interface for managing reports and managing dashboards to your customers. So I'm going to hand controls back to Marissa so she can talk a little bit about our licensing options.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Let me also mention our Community License Edition. For smaller companies with revenue under $1 million US, all Syncfusion products are available for free. That includes all of the controls in the Essential Studio, as well as our enterprise solutions. We also have plenty of customers who have built their businesses starting with our Community License Edition, and we're always happy when more developers join us. For those of you who do not qualify for the Community License, let me introduce you to our Global Flat Licensing. Our Global Flat License eliminates compliance and licensing headaches by making sure everyone who needs a license has one, including third parties and contractors. There are no surprise fees with a global license, so you can focus on your projects instead of worrying about your headcount. If you'd like more information, please visit us at syncfusion.com. It's time to go ahead and end our session for today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. And Aaron, thanks again for presenting. And please be sure to watch your email inboxes for a link to the recording of this presentation. Thanks again for your time and interest, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.